Hi, you are tuned into Maths with AD. To all my viewers out there, thank you for watching my videos. If you haven't as yet liked, shared or subscribed to my channel, not too late, do so now. Don't forget to also press the bell icon to get an update every time a new video is uploaded. Let's get started. Today's lesson is recording data on a bar graph. Here you can see some of the many different types of bar graphs that can be drawn. What is a bar graph? Firstly, look at this graph and you would see that there are 5 columns on these graphs. We refer to these columns as bars and therefore the name bar graph. A bar graph consists firstly of a title. The title for this graph is Favorite Pets. The title gives us an overview of what our graph is all about. It's a topic that was chosen and the topic was Favorite Pets. On the bar graph itself, you would see an x-axis and a y-axis. The x-axis is a line drawn in a horizontal way, starting from here and going across the graph from left to right. The x-axis is the line from which we start to draw our bars. So the x-axis is the base from where our bars are drawn. The y-axis gives us an indication of the different heights of each bar. Okay. The y-axis can be a number that represents each bar. We need labels for the x-axis and the y-axis. Let's start with the x-axis. The label for the x-axis is types of pets. Now we derive this label from my main title that says Favorite Pets. Now if I'm going to be drawing a bar graph of Favorite Pets, then I would need to select different types of pets to use on my bar graph. My different types of pets include dogs, cats, rabbits, hamsters and fish. These are different groups of pets. We call each group of pets a category. So there are 5 categories of pets on this bar graph. Your categories can range from 3 categories to 10 categories. That all depends on you. You could choose only to have 3 different types of pets on your graph. That means only 3 graphs. Or if you choose to have 10 categories of pets, you would then have 10 bars to represent each category of pet. But just remember something, boys and girls, don't have too many categories. The more categories you have, the more bars you would need to draw, and your bar graph can become too crowded, and we don't want that. It's going to be very difficult to read and interpret a bar graph that is too crowded. Okay, so in this case there are 5 categories that were chosen as the different types of pets, and you could also choose different categories. You could also choose different types of pets if you were to draw your own bar graph. Your second label is number of votes. Now just by looking at the word number, you can clearly say that your y-axis is going to comprise of numbers. And not just numbers, but numbers of votes. By looking at my title, Favorite Pets, by looking at the label of the x-axis, which is types of pets, and the label that says number of pets, I can now understand that this bar graph is all about the number of people who voted for instance, dogs as their favorite pets, or how many people voted for cats, rabbits, hamsters, or fish as their favorite pets. Now we need numbers on the y-axis. Your y-axis is made up of numbers starting from 0. Your y-axis always starts from 0. and each line represents a number. Right, and if we look at the label, each number stands for the votes. How many people voted for each category of pet to be their favorite? Okay, these numbers are actually a scale. These numbers are written in a scale. A scale can be written, as this one is, in intervals of 5s. So this scale is written in intervals of 5. From 0 until the first line, we have counted 5 votes. From 0 until the second line, 10 votes were counted. Okay, and so on. Your scale doesn't have to be a counting pattern of 5. A scale can be a counting pattern of 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, 100s. It doesn't matter. Your scale is determined by the number of or the amount of data that you have collected. In this case, the highest data that was collected is 20. So my scale doesn't need to go beyond 20. If it does, one more column or one more row is sufficient. Or we could just stop at 20. Now I said the scale for this is a counting pattern of 5s. That means each line represents a number counting in 5s. Look at this graph. From this graph, you can say that the number of people who voted for dogs as their favorite pet are 20. 20 people voted for dogs as their favorite pet. The bar ends at the line in line with the number 20. It starts from the x-axis and ends at the number 20. How many people voted for rabbits as their favorite pet? So now we look for the category of rabbits. We follow the bar until where it stops. The bar stops at the line, and if I put my ruler in line with this line, I can say that 5 people voted for rabbits as their favorite pet. But look at the fish. The fish goes over the line that says 5, but does not reach the line that says 10. The fish is somewhere in between 5 and 10. So how are we going to read how many people voted for fish as their favorite pet? Now, the numbers that are in between 5 and 10 are 6, 7, 8, and 9. But look carefully. The bar is not too close to the 5, so it can't be 6. The bar is not too close to the 10, so it can't be 9. So we could choose the 2 remaining numbers. We could either say that the number of people who voted for fish as their favorite pet could be 7 or 8. Alright, you could estimate it could be 7 or it could be 8 people who chose fish as their favorite pet. Moving on, we need to draw our own bar graph. Now, if you look at the tally chart or frequency table, you would remember it from my previous video. You need to draw a bar graph after doing a survey and collecting data. Now, this survey was already done in my previous video, and if you haven't watched my previous video, I would suggest you watch it because it gives you important information on how a survey is done and how data is collected in order to use that data or reflect that data on a tally chart or to reflect that data on a bar graph, to represent that data on graphs. So a survey has already been done to show the popularity of the different colors of cars in a particular town. It was noted that during the survey, 7 red cars were counted, 10 blue cars were counted, 3 green cars, and 7 yellow cars were counted. Now your frequency and your tally are representing it. The tally represents the number 7 as a frequency, 10, 3, and 7. We are going to use the same information and we are going to draw up our own bar graph. Just remember, when you look at the frequency, your frequency will give you an idea of what your scale should be. Because we are dealing with smaller numbers, your scale can be a counting pattern in either ones or twos. You do not need a scale of counting in fives or tens because we are dealing with smaller numbers and the highest frequency is only 10. Right, so remember these numbers: 7 red cars, 10 blue cars, 3 green cars, and 7 yellow cars. Your highest frequency is 10. Now to draw our bar graph using that same information from the tally chart, we need rows and columns. We need an x-axis from which we need to start drawing our bars. So this blue line represents the x-axis. From this x-axis, we're going to start drawing or coloring in our blocks in order to make up our bar. We need a y-axis. Along the y-axis, we are going to have numbers that are written in a scale or a counting pattern to represent how many cars were counted. We need a title for this graph. The title, which will be the same as the previous video title, is Popular Color Cars. Right, so my title will tell me that this graph is going to be all about popular colors of cars in a particular town. We need labels. Your y-axis will have the label number of cars, which means now your y-axis needs a scale or a counting pattern, and your x-axis has the label of car colors. Now on your x-axis, we need categories of the different colors of cars that were counted. We have 4 categories of colors, and these 4 categories are red, blue, green, and yellow. Because we have selected only 4 different colors, we need only 4 columns in which to draw our graph, or 4 bars that we're going to draw each category from. Now remember, we need a scale. Before we start drawing our bars, we need a scale. A scale always starts with the number 0. Your starting point from which you start drawing your bars are from the number 0. We did say that because our number range is small, the highest or the most amount of cars that were counted were the blue cars, which were only 10. So we could use the scale in a counting pattern of ones, which means each block stands for 1 car that is counted. Or from the 0 line until the first line, if your bar stops at this line, you know that you have only counted 1 car. So we are going to put this numbering system against each line or each mark of the y-axis, and this is now our scale. Our scale is a counting pattern of numbers in ones. Do you remember how many red cars were counted during the survey? There were 7 red cars counted during the survey. Now you could do one of these 2 things. You could either look for the number 7, right, and draw a line in line with the 7, starting from the 0 and ending at the 7, and then color in these blocks until the 7th line. Or you could count each block as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Count 7 blocks and color in these 7 blocks. Right. How many blue cars were counted? There were 10 blue cars that were counted during the survey. Right, you could count 10 blocks and color in 10 blocks, or you could just simply look for the number 10 and know that this line In line with the 10 is where the bar should stop. Starts at the 0 line, starts at the x-axis, which is your 0 mark, and ends at a line that tells you that there are 10 blue cars that were counted during the survey. There were 3 green cars, 3 blocks, or we could just follow the line until the number 3, and there were 7 yellow cars, 7 blocks, or just follow the top of the bar in line with the number 7 to figure out how many yellow cars were colored in. Okay, now the same graph can be drawn with a different scale, and that is a scale of a counting pattern in 2s. Now this time each block does not represent 1 car but represents 2 cars. So if you have drawn from the 0 mark until the first line, we are now counting each block or each line as in 2s. Alright, so let's count. 2, 4, 6. There were 6 until this line that represents 6. But this bar is going beyond the 6. However, it does not reach the 8. So we can say, if you take your ruler and put it in line with the end or the top of this bar, you would follow until the middle of 6 and 8. You would follow this line until you realize that this bar is in the middle of 6 and 8. What number is in the middle of 6 and 8? The number 7. So we can clearly say that this red bar represents 7 red cars that were counted during the survey. The blue cars reach the line which says 10. So there were 10 blue cars that were counted during the survey. The green cars, however, pass the line that says 2, but does not reach the line that says 4. It stops in between 2 and 4. Now take your ruler and follow until you reach the middle of 2 and 4, and that will mean there are 3. 3 is in between 2 and 4. So there are 3 green cars that were counted. 7 yellow because it is in between 6 and 8. This graph can also be drawn in a horizontal manner. It is the same graph, but what do you notice? You notice that your labels have been swapped. Your x-axis, which is still at the bottom, does not have your categories anymore. Your x-axis now has your scale. In your previous graph, your scale was on your y-axis. On this graph, your scale is on your x-axis. So we are swapping the scales around. Here, the categories of the different colors are on your x-axis, but on this graph that is drawn horizontally, that means from left to right, your categories are now on your y-axis. So it is possible for us to draw graphs in a vertical or a horizontal manner. And to read a graph that is drawn in a horizontal manner is the same. If you look at the markings, your starting point of your graph is always the 0. And we're moving across the scale. In a left to right manner. The red bar ends in between the number 6 and 8. The number in between 6 and 8 is 7. So we can say that there were 7 red cars that were counted during the survey. If you look at your green bar ends in between the number 2 and 4. What number is in between 2 and 4? 3. So there were 3 green cars counted during the survey. The blue cars end on the line of 10, and there were 10 blue cars that were counted during the survey. Blue cars were the most popular color cars in that town. Green was the least popular. All right, so now you have learned that a bar graph can be drawn with a scale of counting patterns of ones. It also can be drawn with a scale of counting patterns in twos. It also can be drawn instead of a vertical upright manner, it can be drawn in a horizontal left to right manner. Okay, so these are the different ways of which we could draw a bar graph using the same information. Now here are just some of the different types of graphs that you can get. Here, now remember boys and girls, I told you your title and your labels vary according to your topics. Now this topic is on fruit, so your title is nicest fruits. You can give a title to your graph that suits the graph the best. Okay, so this person decided that nicest fruit will be the best title for this graph. Look carefully at these bars. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars. These 6 bars represent 6 different categories of fruits. Your label also for your y-axis is number of fruits. Your number is your scale. Look carefully at this scale. This scale has a counting pattern of 5s. Now, we use a counting pattern of 5s or larger numbers if our information that we collect has larger numbers. And if you look at the highest or the tallest bar on this graph and you follow it with a ruler, you would notice that the highest bar is until the number 40. So if you are using larger numbers, then obviously your scale would be a counting pattern with bigger numbers. Okay. You can make up as many questions as you want to about this graph. A different graph with different titles is holding your breath. Looking at the labels, your labels tell you that the numbers on the y-axis are representing seconds. If I didn't have this label seconds, I wouldn't know what the 10 stands for or the 20 or any of these numbers stand for. So the label tells me that these numbers stands for seconds. Remember, it could stand for minutes maybe, it could stand for hours or days or even length. But however, on this particular graph, these numbers represent the seconds that these people can hold their breath for. We are talking about students, and the different categories are the different names that are given to these students. By looking at this bar graph, we can say that Ben can hold his breath for 50 seconds. His bar is in line with the number 50. If there has been anybody who has a bar that ends in between, let's just say 0 and 10, that means halfway in between 0 and 10 is the number 5. So if a bar stops in between 0 and 10, that means that person can only hold their breath for 5 seconds. In between 60 and 70, do you know what number is in between 60 and 70? The number 65. So if there is a bar that stops in between 60 and 70, that means that person can hold their breath only for 65 seconds. Okay, and that's how we read. Fortunately though, these students can hold their breaths and the bars stop exactly on the line to show you the number or the length of time that they can hold their breath for. Who can hold their breath for the longest period of time? Susan. Susan can hold her breath for 90 seconds in a row. Before I leave you, there's one more type of graph that I want to show you. This is called a side-by-side double bar chart. Now we call it a double bar chart because here now we have 2 bars in one category. The title tells you that we are talking about visitors at the zoo. The labels are telling you the number of visitors at the zoo. The month tells me that we have chosen 3 months in which this survey was done. Now, although there are 12 months in the year, this survey was only done over a period of 3 months. You choose the length of time that you want to do your survey. Having 2 bars in each category, we need to look at a key. The key tells us that the red bars are standing for adult visitors and the blue bars represent the child visitors. So in the month of April, we have, if you look at the red bars, we have 300 adult visitors at the zoo. And if you look at the blue bar, in the same month, we had only 200 child visitors at the zoo. Okay, so that is how you would read a side-by-side double bar chart. If you look at the month of May, how many adult visitors were at the zoo? Take your ruler and follow the line until the number that it is in line with. There are 500 adult visitors at the zoo and there are 600 child visitors at the zoo during the month of May. Look carefully at the scale. Because we are dealing with huge, large numbers, our scale now is no more a counting pattern of 1 or 2s or even 5s. Our scale now is a counting pattern of hundreds. So each mark represents an interval of hundreds. And boys and girls, that is how you would read a bar graph. You can make up as many questions as you want to about the different graphs that I have shown you, or you could ask your parent or a teacher to make up questions for you and answer these questions, and that will help you to analyze. Analyze means study and interpret what these graphs are all about. Until next time, it's bye from me. And look forward to my next